Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Gonzalez. I'm a professor in the Department of Biology, and along with Kevin Monau in the Department of Geography and David Waxsmith in the School of Urban Planning, we have been tasked with the grand challenge of creating an interdisciplinary center of gravity around the urban theme. One of the great challenges of the 21st century is going to be the sustainability of our cities. Oh. It's all right. And so, until now, there has been no apparent network of intercollaboration between different departments, different faculties, members of staff around the topic of urban sustainability. And so that has been our goal through a process of workshops, engagement with the community, and new opportunities funds. We've managed to drum up a range of research projects, some of which we were going to showcase with you today. We brought a posse of people with us here to show you what is going on currently around the urban theme. So our vision statement you see at the bottom here is trying to generate knowledge to improve human well-being by making cities more resilient, socially inclusive, and less environmentally impactful. But why cities? The historical and projected growth out to 2050 here, as you saw at the end, of the world's urban population. All right? We are currently sitting at roughly 50% of the Earth's population living in cities. By 2050, that's going to be 68%. That's enormous. That's 7 billion people living in cities. But around the 1600, less than 5% of the world's population was living in cities. And by the turn of the 20th century, it was only 15% of the world's population. So what we're witnessing is probably the single greatest demographic, social, and economic transition that humanity has been through. We have to get this problem right. So I'm going to share with you today some of the projects that we have put into place that have a explicitly multi-scale approach to the problem. Cities obviously are embedded in a broader network of trade so that cities are influencing their own economic, social, and environmental fate. We also have, so this new cities is a deliberately global approach to thinking about how development will emerge through these master planned cities. Then at a national scale, we have Project PRISM that Brian Young will talk about, which is centered on Panama and the country of Panama and the city of Panama and the efforts that are going there to transition to a more sustainable footing in Panama. And then Project 3, which is an effort to develop a living lab and citywide dashboard. So how can we mobilize enormous streams of data that are coming from our cities, in particular the city of Montreal right now, to inform decision makers, use that not only as a passive communication tool, but as a means of performing experiments, as engaging in scenarios with policy programmers and decision makers to affect change within the city. Number 4 takes that neighborhood approach. So we've gone from international, national, citywide, and now to the neighborhood approach in a project that will assess across Canada's cities the varying degrees of sustainability that are achieved by our neighborhoods. And finally, down at the level of you and me, at the level of an individual, how can we change our behaviors as inhabitants of cities to engage in a more sustainable process? And so that's the Project MICO. We'll have a few words on that from Kevin. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our first speaker, Robin.
Hi, so just to jump right in, I'm going to tell you a bit about the sustainability dashboard that we're working on developing, and I'm just going to start by contextualizing it within the current landscape of research and existing initiatives that are going on right now. In terms of what's out there right now in terms of projects and initiatives that are data-driven and related to sustainability, we found six categories that exist out there right now. The first are large-scale national and international sustainability-driven organizations. These include large names like 100 Resilient Cities and the Canada Smart Cities Challenge, not necessarily data-driven, but usually have a data component. The example on the side there is from the Sustainable Development Goals Global Dashboard. The next one are government-led initiatives within national and regional agencies. These tend to focus on the more technical aspects of data collection and representation. The example here is from the Operations Center in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. We have city-based sustainability initiatives from municipal governments and other organizations. These include a lot of sort of interactive web-based mapping platforms. The city of Surrey has a really good example in BC, which you see there on the right. Community-based organizations and initiatives, they tend to focus on visualizing existing census data at different scales for some sort of community purpose. The example here is from an initiative called Policy Map. They also allow you to put your own data into it. And I just go back to the academic initiatives and campus-based initiatives. These tend to focus on sort of either campus-driven projects, living lab models, and locally focused models. The example here is from an initiative called City Crone from a university in Italy. And lastly, there are independent and private organizations and initiatives that have different focuses, but there's one really useful one that I found, which is pictured here, which is called PrEP Data. This one focuses specifically on resilience and climate data visualization. So turning more to the academic literature that's out there, we saw 6 emerging themes that are relevant to this project. The first is that while sustainability dashboards and these sort of visualizing techniques are very powerful tools and are helpful with understanding certain elements of cities, they are socially and politically framed. They're not neutral, so that needs to be taken into consideration. Real-time data is a very effective communication tool for these kinds of projects in particular. And furthermore, dynamic data visualization has been shown to be able to change behaviors in the user. Bottom-up approaches such as living lab and locally focused models are particularly effective in the smart cities context and also sustainability-related contexts. Scenario modeling is a very helpful tool and can be used to sort of get different stakeholders together, visualize different models, and move forward towards a common objective. And that's where community participation also comes in, which is really important when getting different actors in the same room, but also to keep in mind that it's not necessarily an equal and equitable process, so it's just something to consider. So the literature points to the success of interactive and dynamic data visualization methods, but what we see in what currently exists is that there's actually a gap in sustainability dashboards and projects going beyond the visualization of pre-existing data, whether it be census data, things like that, and at static scales. So this leaves room for a more future-oriented, scalable, and interactive model. So with that, I will turn it over to Hussein, who will expand on what we're doing.
Hello, my name is Hossein. Thank you, Robin. I'm going to give you a brief about the technical issues of dashboard. The sustainability dashboard is designed to convey the complex relationship between the social, I should keep it like this, social, environmental, and issues. The need for the dashboard is a premise on the idea that we need to understand and track and respond to how urban environment respond upon sustainability. Based on the sustainability scope and more precisely the sustainability question we have in mind, so we follow this chart in the left side, which is almost identical for all type of the sustainability questions. So the first part is the data source, which can be static and real time. So the real time data will be a central feature of the dashboard that and enable users to view baseline behaviors and provide interactive experience that would display changes in behavior and comparison with behavior of others. So the real-time data are also important because trends evolve over time and should be tracked. While acknowledging the importance of the real-time data, the use of the census static data, including census data, would become crucial to ensure that the interaction between the real-time data and also the period data occur. And also, we have the second phase, which is the centerpiece of the dashboard, which is employing the advanced analysis and advanced analysis modeling and techniques in order to apply to different type of the data sources. And then we have the knowledge driven by these techniques, which a community can use this sort of information. And we are sure that we have a notebook on the line of the dashboard, which give more interpretation about the data source that we use, and also about the outcomes. So it's going to be easier for users to understand what's going on inside the dashboard. So there, on the right side, you will see there is a possibility that we can show as an example, as a scenario, to show the commuting flow data into the dashboard. So we're going to have this question in mind, that why people choose car instead of being active in the transportation. So we're going to have right now I'm just using the static data, census data. So we applied different techniques in order to visualize which part of the city use more passive transportation, and it means that they impact more on the environment by emitting more carbon dioxide. So there are many reasons behind that, and we are looking for for answering to this type of the specific questions. For example, lack of public transport in the neighborhood, or lack of job opportunity in neighborhood, or lack of affordable housing. So there are many solutions for that. One of them can be implementing more green area in order to reduce the impact of the carbon dioxide in the environment. So by this, I will pass over to Kevin, which can add. To you, which can give more.
Thank you. All right, so I will talk about the PRISM initiative, so the Panama Research and Integrated Sustainability Model. And so it is international context by which McGill can contribute to urban development and other things. So this is meant as a whole country spatially explicit computational model which can serve as a platform for sustainability science within Panama. We've been making a lot of progress recently. So these are the different sub-projects which are ongoing within Panama. So we have a biodiversity layer pre-built now with 6,000 species estimated across the country. We have a geophysical model to estimate some of the processes going on throughout the country as well. And these will be integrated with other aspects such as ecological connectivity and the urban development. The urban development component of it is in partnership with the person who's actually in charge of the development of Panama City. And so we can just ask him, what does he need from us to make improvements for the planning of Panama? So although the model is across the entire country, we can of course zoom into specific areas of interest. The bottom area there is Panama City, and it is surrounded by two reserves, and they are actually interested and could actually implement reforestation of the entire area, and so that is what we are actually helping them with. All right, so we are looking at reforestation plans and the consequence associated with that for connectivity, water, and carbon sequestration. And so these are some of the direct elements that they want to put in and could actually influence the decisions that they make for the future decadal plans of Panama City. And just as an aside, we've also thought about the advantages associated with education, and so we've integrated this with the School of Environment's capstone course, Environment 401, who are quantifying the urban trees in Panama City and looking at the ecosystem services associated with that. Of course, we can also zoom out. So not only are we interested in Panama City, but we're interested in the larger national footprint of that. And so we can, because we have these underlying layers now, we can examine the consequence of development of Panama City on all of the other population centers, as well as the consequences of those population centers themselves on such things as biodiversity, connectivity, nutrient pollution. I just have a small picture there, which is basically one of our workers sampling for us. the nutrient levels within the rivers. So we have actually implemented a monitoring program as well as part of our PRISM initiative. All right, so I think I'll leave it at that and give it to Raja.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raja Sengupta. I'm in the Department of Geography. And I just want to point out that my colleagues Kevin Mana and Sarah Moser from Geography are also implicated in this project, which I'm going to talk about next, which is the understanding of master planned cities in the Indian context. Now, the second slide that Andrew put up talked about India having 875 million urban residents. Of these 875 million by 2050, right, you're going to have the growth of cities. And what the government has done is the development of what they call as master planned cities, right? And they're sort of conflating master planned cities with the other notion of smart. So everybody wants master planned smart cities, right, as if it's going to happen overnight. So this is a picture that I took from a bus stop from India's first smart city initiative, a city known as Lavasa, just outside of Pune. And I don't know if you can tell, but the slats on those, so this is a bus stop, right? And it's advertising all the cool things you can do in Lavasa, except none of them really exist, right? And the bus stop, if you notice, the slats are falling down because nobody inhabits that city anymore. Right? So it's one of the cities that was built 150 kilometers from Pune. It's hard to get to, and nobody lives there. So of the 875 million people who are going to move to the cities, this is not going to be one of them. Right? And this feeds very well into Narendra Modi's idea of 100 smart cities, but certainly not in this manner. Because when I took the picture, this is what Lavasa looked like. Right? If you consider India to be overpopulated, yeah, it is, but there's not a single soul on that urban environment. Right? So what's going on here? So what we are going to do is we're going to take a place like Pune, which is another city, designated smart city by the Narendra Modi government. And this is not Google Maps, so it doesn't look as pretty, but this is a very good source of data. This is OpenStreetMaps, and I can actually take certain parts of the city and analyze it for its mobility, for its walkability, for its connectivity to public places. So for example, if you take a heart of the city and you look for its connectivity, these are all the building footprints along with the road network, and you look for the public places which are over there, you can see that most of the public places happen to be, the triangles happen to be well located. If you look at some other places in the same city, which for example in the northeast corner, which is developing and is supposed to be planned, you will see that the dispersion is not as dense or not as well connected. So what we want to do is look at different parts of the Pune Smart City Initiative, see what master planning does, because this is what master planning looks like. And I'd just like you to look at, this is a road that is not yet complete. You can see the highways coming up, but imagine the connectivity to an environment in this sense, and how many people are going to be able to walk or live in this environment. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Raja. So I'm going to wrap up and point to the two other parts of this, sort of at the neighborhood scale and the individual scale that we're also working at. And this idea of sort of talking about sustainable neighborhoods and then actual how people actually behave. And one thing I like to do in order to wrap up is to take a step back in history where before words like sustainability and before words like well-being were used, we can trace how some previous attempts to make cities healthier, make people healthier, have less exposure to pollutants, really had some unexpected results, right? So we see this kind of very crowded places like London and Manchester in the Industrial Revolution. It was clear that this kind of development wasn't working out, and so there were lots of attempts made to make them more, again, we're using the sort of buzzword of sustainability or even talking about well-being, but how can we make cities better places to live, right? And so some of these kind of ways of getting people away from industry, separating where people lived, led to this kind of development. As you can see, that some of these kind of development patterns had these sort of unexpected results, right, in terms of getting people living in these kind of places where it was very difficult to access, where they need to go. So you see these kind of problems with, instead of having, being able to have a mix of land uses where people can easily, walk and cycle and whatnot, we're stuck with these kind of environments, which lead to obesity and inactivity and so on. as opposed to kind of the Dutch model where you see not sort of too many cars in the parking lot, but too many bicycles, right? But also, and this kind of goes back to some of what Dr. Gibbs was talking about previously, I mean, there's also these cultural and political aspects here where, you have these kind of, culture and discourse around the suburbs. This was a couple months ago, this, kind of tone-deaf article around, people like the suburbs, so, why don't we have more of them? This is what people want. So kind of ignoring any of these kind of impacts on health or environmental aspects and so on. And then above and beyond, how we design our cities or our neighborhoods, we can think about how people interact with the land use and with their neighborhoods. And so in collaboration, mostly being led by Richard Janda in law, they're doing some fascinating work on these ways to give direct feedback to individuals in terms of making decisions about either how they'll transport themselves, their diet choices, where they'll buy their food, but in a very interactive and direct way in terms of an app-based way to understand what you're doing in terms of waste, in terms of physical activity, in terms of transport activity, but being this very much iterative and interactive process. And one of the first things which Hussein already talked about, and you can see, is kind of a brief plug for the two of the posters that you'll see outside once we break. We're looking at this idea of child behavior. We've managed to map out a lot of this stuff already, and hopefully we can have this sort of more released in a couple weeks so you can actually check it out online. But being able to zoom into any census tract in the country and see how people are traveling to work, and we've started to do initial calculations of greenhouse gas emissions associated with each census tract, as well as things like energy used by humans, like how many calories are people burning by walking and cycling to work. And so we have a lot of those already that you can see part of the posters out front. And just to end with, again, with our vision that we stated at the beginning of this. So our vision is knowledge to improve human well-being while making cities more resilient, socially inclusive, and less environmentally impactful. And I like to say a sustainable city is green, a sustainable city is connected, and a sustainable city is equal. So with that, I'll leave it. Thanks.